What if the timeline of human history is wrong? Why do we find a legendary Atlantean metal inside a Roman shipwreck, a 40,000-year-old bracelet drilled with the precision of a modern high-speed machine, and an entire oceanic city built from basalt columns weighing up to 80 tons? These objects should not exist, at least not in the eras where they were discovered. And yet, they are real. They were excavated, cataloged, measured, photographed. So if all of these impossible discoveries truly belong to our past, then what part of human history has been erased, forgotten, or simply never recorded? For most of modern history, we have treated the human timeline as a straight, unbroken line. Simple beginnings, gradual progress, predictable evolution. Archaeology, textbooks, and conventional scholarship have reinforced the idea that human advancement follows a logical sequence, from stone to bronze, from bronze to iron, from primitive settlements to organized civilizations. But on the ground, scattered across continents and buried beneath layers of earth and time, the evidence tells a more complicated story. In remote caves in Siberia, on the seafloor off the coast of Italy, in the jungles of Micronesia, and in the high mountains of Peru, researchers have uncovered objects and structures that do not belong to the chapters in which history has placed them. These discoveries violate expected technological levels, appear in places they should not be, or predate the rise of the civilizations capable of producing them. They are known today as out-of-place artifacts, or OOP arts, and they challenge the very logic of the human timeline. What makes these discoveries especially compelling is that they are not vague myths or folklore. They are measurable, analyzable, and often stored in museums and research institutions. Metallurgists have tested their composition. Geologists have examined their layers. Archaeologists have documented their excavation sites. And yet, despite being grounded in data, many of them yield conclusions that make scholars uneasy because they do not fit. Why would a legendary alloy described by Plato appear in a Roman shipwreck centuries later? How can a bracelet dated to 40,000 years ago bear drilling marks that resemble the spiral signature of modern high-speed machinery? Why does an ancient city built on the ocean require engineering techniques that even today would be expensive, difficult, or outright impossible without heavy equipment? There are only three possibilities. The dating is wrong, the interpretation is wrong, or something about our understanding of ancient humanity is incomplete. This video does not claim to rewrite history. Instead, it invites you to walk along the cracks in the timeline, the places where anomalies gather, where logic breaks, and where the past refuses to cooperate with the narrative we have built for it. Across 10 discoveries, from lost metals to impossible architecture, you will see patterns emerge: sophistication where none should exist, knowledge that appears ahead of its time, and hints of civilizations far older or more advanced than the records suggest. Before we begin, consider a simple question. If these anomalies are real, and they are, what else might be waiting beneath the layers of time? 1. The orichalcum ingots of the Gela shipwreck. In 2015, off the southern coast of Sicily, near the ancient Greek colony of Gela, marine archaeologists recovered the remains of a shipwreck lying just a few meters beneath the waves. The vessel, dated to the 6th century BCE, was transporting cargo that appeared unremarkable at first glance: amphorae, fragments of pottery, and the usual maritime debris found in Mediterranean wrecks. But among the sediment, divers discovered something that should not have existed: 39 gleaming reddish-gold ingots, each cast with an unusual metallic sheen. Their composition would ignite one of the most intriguing debates in classical archaeology. Laboratory tests revealed that the bars were made of an alloy consisting primarily of copper, about 75 to 80%, mixed with zinc, lead, and small traces of other elements. What astonished researchers was that this alloy matched ancient descriptions of orichalcum, a material long thought to be mythical. Plato described orichalcum as the second most valuable metal of Atlantis, surpassed only by gold and believed to emit a fiery glow. Historians had generally dismissed it as poetic embellishment, yet here it was, real, tangible, and resting on the seafloor after more than 2,500 years. The problem is not whether the metal exists, It clearly does, but how it exists in this form and why it appears where it does. Bronze and brass production during this period was known, but alloys of this precise composition are exceedingly rare in Mediterranean archaeology. More importantly, the technological methods required to produce consistent zinc-copper alloys at scale involve controlled high-temperature processes. These processes, according to conventional timelines, did not become widespread until centuries later. So the questions begin. If orichalcum was simply early brass, why does it appear so suddenly, with no evolutionary chain in metallurgy leading up to it? If it was a routine alloy, why do so few examples survive in the archaeological record? And why does it bear such a strong resemblance, compositionally and visually, to the legendary metal described in texts that predate the shipwreck by centuries? Some scholars argue that the ingots represent an experimental or transitional form of brass production. Others propose that the bars reflect a lost metallurgical tradition, possibly inherited from earlier, unknown sources. A more speculative school of thought suggests that Plato's description may have been rooted in real materials circulating in the ancient world, materials whose origins are now forgotten. But whether these bars confirm myth or expose gaps in our understanding of metallurgy, the discovery forces one uncomfortable question. If this alloy existed long before it should have, what other technologies from the ancient world have yet to resurface? 2. The Denisovan bracelet with high-speed drilling marks. In the frigid Altai Mountains of Siberia lies Denisova Cave, a site that has reshaped our understanding of ancient humanity. Excavations here have revealed DNA traces of an enigmatic human lineage, the Denisovans, known primarily through genetic evidence rather than physical remains. But among the fragmented bones and stone tools, archaeologists uncovered something that should not belong to a Paleolithic world: a polished chlorite bracelet exquisitely crafted and dated to approximately 40,000 years ago. Unlike typical Stone Age ornaments, this bracelet exhibits a level of precision that startled researchers from the moment it was first examined. The chlorite itself is a difficult material, requiring careful shaping due to its layered structure. Yet the inner surface of the bracelet is nearly perfectly circular, and its edges show uniform polishing that suggests long, deliberate refinement. But the greatest mystery lies in a single feature: a drilled hole, not crudely chipped but carved with a smooth, spiral motion that resembles the signature of modern high-speed drilling equipment. Microscopic analysis by Russian researchers revealed spiral grooves inside the opening, indicating the use of a tool rotating at a speed far beyond what is possible with hand-driven drills made of stone, bone, or wood. The consistency of the pressure and the regularity of the spiral pattern imply mechanical control. In other words, the hole appears as though it was made by a machine, not primitive tools. This is where the timeline collapses. The Denisovan bracelet predates the emergence of advanced metallurgy, the wheel and axle mechanism, and complex craft technologies by tens of thousands of years. It is older than agriculture, older than pottery, older than most cave art. And yet someone, a people we know almost nothing about, engineered an object requiring knowledge of rotational mechanics, precision tooling, and aesthetic refinement. What explanations exist? Some scholars argue that abrasion with sand and leather straps could mimic spiral drilling marks, though the uniformity challenges this view. Others propose that the pendant attached to the hole required such precision, pushing these ancient artisans to develop unfamiliar techniques. A more radical hypothesis speculates that Denisovans might have inherited lost technological knowledge from even earlier groups, a theory impossible to prove, yet difficult to dismiss given the evidence. Regardless of interpretation, the bracelet forces a confrontation with an uncomfortable truth. 40,000 years ago, someone possessed a degree of craftsmanship that does not fit the trajectory of human technological development. So we must ask, if this level of precision existed in the Paleolithic era, what other traces of advanced knowledge have vanished with the Denisovans? 3. Waffle rock, the geometric stone pattern that shouldn't exist. On the shores of Jennings-Randolph Lake in West Virginia stands one of the most visually striking geological anomalies in North America. a massive stone block covered in repeating geometric patterns. Locals call it waffle rock, a name befitting the grid of raised interlocking polygons etched across its surface. At first glance, the formation resembles a cast metal plate or the imprinted mold of an ancient industrial device, yet it is made entirely of stone, embedded in the landscape long before the lake was formed. Waffle rock's pattern consists of hexagons and pentagons arranged with near-mechanical precision. The polygons repeat with a consistency rarely found in natural formations, and the raised ridges appear to follow a grid-like logic that suggests intentional design. Some segments of the rock present three-dimensional reliefs that look almost engineered, as though shaped by molds or pressed into form. The sheer regularity of the pattern has caused generations of observers to speculate on its origins, from ancient civilizations to extraterrestrial involvement. The scientific explanation is that waffle rock is the result of concretion fracturing, a rare geological process where sedimentary rocks undergo stress that causes them to break into geometric cells. But this explanation struggles to account for several details. Many natural fracture patterns lack the symmetry, depth uniformity, and angular precision on display here. Moreover, the raised lattice appears to have formed in relief rather than simply splitting, a feature difficult to reconcile with known geological mechanics. Complicating matters further is the scale. Waffle rock is not a small artifact, but a massive slab weighing many tons. Portions of the original formation were destroyed during dam construction, leaving a large remaining block preserved near the shoreline as a protected landmark. Visitors often remark that the stone looks engineered, cast, or printed, and even trained geologists have acknowledged that the formation's geometry is unusually regular. What explains this anomaly? Some researchers argue for a unique combination of pressure, sedimentation, and mineralization that produced an exceptionally symmetrical pattern. Others suspect that the visible slab represents only part of a larger formation, making the pattern appear more structured than it truly is. More speculative theorists suggest anthropogenic origins, that ancient engineers or unknown groups may have shaped it intentionally, though no tools or associated artifacts have been found. Still, the impression remains difficult to shake. Waffle rock looks designed. Which leads to a simple yet disquieting question. If this pattern truly formed naturally, why does it imitate the geometric logic of human engineering so closely? 4. Nan Madol, the oceanic megastructure built from impossible stones. Far out in the Pacific, on the remote island of Pohnpei in Micronesia, lies one of the most enigmatic architectural complexes in the ancient world. Known as Nan Madol, this sprawling city rises directly from the ocean, composed of more than 90 artificial islets connected by tidal canals. Its ruins stretch across 200 acres, forming a kind of Venice of the Pacific. But unlike Venice, Nan Madol was not built with bricks, wood, or carved limestone. It was constructed from massive basalt columns, some weighing between 25 and 90 tons, stones so heavy that even modern cranes would struggle to lift and position them with ease. The city's architecture is a marvel of engineering. The basalt logs, shaped into hexagonal or octagonal prisms, are stacked in crisscross patterns resembling giant wooden beams. The walls of the largest structures stand up to 30 feet tall, with interlocked columns laid like oversized logs in a monumental lattice. The precision with which these stones are placed, balanced, and aligned defies the limitations of the region's known technology. There is no evidence of pulleys, wheels, draft animals, or metal tools in Pohnpei's ancient culture. Yet someone transported tens of thousands of tons of basalt across considerable distances and set them into place with extraordinary care. The source quarries for much of this basalt lie miles away, over rugged terrain and across water. How were the stones moved? Oral traditions speak of sorcerers who could make the stones float through the air. While obviously metaphorical, these stories may reflect an ancient memory of forgotten techniques or now lost engineering methods. The challenge becomes even more perplexing when considering sea level changes. Some stones appear to have been placed at elevations that suggest construction began long before current shorelines stabilized. The anomalies multiply. Why build a city in the ocean at all? Why use stones so large that construction would have been a monumental burden? Why select a location vulnerable to tides and storms? Scholars have proposed ritual or political explanations, but none account for the engineering ambition. Some researchers argue that basalt columns naturally fracture into log-like shapes, making them easier to stack. Others suggest communal labor over generations. Yet these explanations do not address the transportation problem or the scale of the endeavor. The possibility of a highly organized, technically sophisticated culture, now vanished, lingers beneath every fallen column. Which leads to an unavoidable question. If the builders of Nan Madol commanded such mastery over stone and engineering, what else might they have achieved that has not survived the ocean and time? 5. Plimpton 322, the mathematical tablet, centuries ahead of its time. In the early 20th century, an unassuming clay tablet surfaced in the collection of American publisher George Arthur Plimpton. Numbered Plimpton 322, the fragment came from ancient Mesopotamia and dates to around 1800 BCE, during the Old Babylonian period. At first glance, the tablet appears simple. 4 columns of cuneiform numbers etched neatly into baked clay. But when historians and mathematicians deciphered those numbers, they realized they were looking at something extraordinary, a mathematical document centuries, perhaps millennia, ahead of its expected era. The tablet lists sets of numbers that correspond to what modern mathematicians recognize as Pythagorean triples, integer solutions to the equation (2 plus b2 = c2). These triples form the basis of right triangle geometry and trigonometry, yet Plimpton 322 predates the birth of Pythagoras by more than 1,000 years. In effect, the Babylonians were using advanced geometric principles long before the Greeks formalized them. More striking still is the precision. The ratios on the tablet align with concepts akin to trigonometric functions, expressed not in degrees but in the Babylonians' sophisticated base 60 numeral system. Some researchers argue the tablet represents an early trigonometric table, the oldest known in human history. Others believe it served as a tool for engineering, surveying, or constructing temples with precise right angles. Whatever its purpose, the mathematical sophistication is undeniable. Here lies the mystery. How could a civilization without modern algebra, calculators, or even the conceptual language of trigonometry generate such an exact and systematic dataset? Babylonian mathematics was known to be complex, but nothing else from this period suggests the use of abstract geometric relationships at this level. The tablet seems to appear fully formed, with no clear developmental lineage. Various explanations have been proposed. Some scholars suggest that Babylonian scribes were conducting practical calculations for architecture, inadvertently creating trigonometric patterns. Others think the tablet preserves knowledge from an even older tradition, a mathematical inheritance passed down from cultures whose records are lost. A more controversial hypothesis argues that Plimpton 322 hints at a broader, more systematic mathematical framework that has since vanished from the archaeological record. What is certain is that the tablet does not fit neatly into the accepted timeline of mathematical progress. It raises the possibility that ancient civilizations possessed intellectual tools far more advanced than we assume, tools that may have guided their architecture, astronomy, and engineering. Which leads to the next logical question. If a 4,000-year-old clay tablet contains mathematics ahead of its time, what other lost sciences might be hidden in the ruins of the ancient world? 6. The Fuente Magna Bowl, Sumerian script in the Andes. In the highlands near Lake Titicaca in Bolivia, a farmer reportedly discovered a large, ornately decorated stone bowl on the outskirts of his property. At first glance, the artifact, now known as the Fuente Magna Bowl, appeared to be a ceremonial vessel of local Andean origin. Its shape, motifs, and craftsmanship suggest a ritual object. But when researchers examined the interior of the bowl, they found something that ignited decades of controversy. Inscriptions resembling Sumerian writing, thousands of miles from Mesopotamia and separated by vast stretches of time and culture. The bowl features 2 distinct forms of script. One appears to resemble Proto-Sumerian pictographs, the kind used in Mesopotamia during the late 4th millennium BCE. The other resembles a more linear script, faintly similar to later cuneiform-derived symbols. No known Andean writing system uses anything like these signs. The presence of such inscriptions in the heart of South America is, to put it mildly, anomalous. If authentic, the implications are staggering. The bull would indicate some form of transoceanic interaction between ancient Mesopotamia and the Andean cultures, long before the rise of the Inca and long before any accepted evidence of intercontinental contact. It would suggest that either ancient peoples traveled far more widely than historians believe, or that fragments of an older, more interconnected world survived into later cultures. Skeptics, however, argue that the inscriptions may be a modern forgery, pointing to inconsistencies in the carving styles. Others suggest the bull could have been influenced by early explorers or missionaries who brought Near Eastern artifacts to the region. Yet these explanations often fail to account for the bull's discovery context, the weathering of the inscriptions, and the mixed hybridization of the scripts, which do not match any known historical copying tradition. Even scholars who doubt the Sumerian connection admit that the bull's iconography and engravings are unlike anything typically found in Andean archaeology. The combination of Old World motifs and New World materials creates a puzzle with no satisfying resolution. So what does the Fuente Magna bull represent? A genuine artifact of forgotten contact between distant civilizations? A misunderstood relic of a local culture that briefly experimented with symbolic systems? Or the remnant of an even older, unknown tradition that left only faint traces behind? Regardless of the explanation, the bull forces a reconsideration of ancient cultural boundaries, and it leads to an unsettling question. If scripts linked to Mesopotamia appear in the Andes, what else about humanity's ancient migrations remains undiscovered? 7. The Saqqara bird, an ancient glider or a simple toy? In 1898, during excavations at the vast Saqqara necropolis in Egypt, archaeologists uncovered a small wooden artifact buried among grave goods dating to roughly 200 BCE. Carved from sycamore wood and measuring just over 7 inches in length, the object resembles a stylized bird. Its wings are straight, its body aerodynamic, and its tail fin is vertical, a feature no bird possesses in nature. At first, it was catalogued merely as a funerary figurine, but as researchers studied its shape more closely, they realized the piece defied simple classification. Today, it is known as the Saqqara bird, one of Egypt's most intriguing archaeological puzzles. The design raises immediate questions. The wings are not curved like those of typical bird depictions in Egyptian art. Instead, they are flat, resembling the wings of a glider. The body narrows smoothly, and the tail fin, positioned vertically, mirrors the yaw stabilizer found in modern aircraft. The center of mass lies near the midpoint of the body, much like engineered flying models. These features hint at a level of aerodynamic awareness unexpected for its period. Tests conducted by researchers and aviation engineers have produced mixed results. Some replicas of the Saqqara bird, adjusted for weight and balance, can indeed glide through the air with surprising stability. Others argue that without a horizontal stabilizer, the object cannot sustain controlled flight, suggesting it may have been a religious symbol rather than a functional model. Yet these arguments do not fully resolve the artifact's unusual engineering-like features. The real mystery lies in its context. Ancient Egypt is not known for experimentation with mechanical flight. There are no surviving texts describing gliders, flying machines, or aerodynamic principles, and no other models with similar design elements have been found. The Saqqara bird stands alone, a solitary object hinting at either unknown experimentation or a symbolic design accidentally resembling modern aerodynamics. Some scholars propose that the artifact represents the Ba, the spiritual soul that takes the form of a bird in Egyptian belief. Others suggest it may have been a child's toy or a decorative piece. A more provocative hypothesis posits that the object is a scaled-down representation of a real flying device, an idea with little supporting evidence but persistent allure. The ambiguity remains unresolved. Whether intentional or accidental, the Saqqara bird exhibits an understanding of aerodynamic form far ahead of its documented time. And so the question arises, If ancient artisans crafted an object so closely aligned with aerodynamic principles, what other forgotten experiments in ancient engineering have yet to be unearthed? 8. The Antikythera mechanism, a mechanical computer lost to time. In 1901, sponge divers off the Greek island of Antikythera recovered the remains of a Roman-era shipwreck dating to the 1st century BCE. Among the statues, pottery, and coins was a corroded lump of bronze that seemed unremarkable until it split open. Inside were fragments of precision-made gears, unlike anything known from the ancient world. Over decades of research, the object was revealed to be the Antikythera mechanism, a device so advanced that it would not be matched again for more than 1,000 years. At its core, the mechanism contains at least 30 interlocking bronze gears, complete with teeth cut at precise angles, axles, pointers, and calibrated scales. These components were housed within a wooden casing and operated by a hand crank. When turned, the gears simulated planetary movements, predicted eclipses, tracked lunar phases, and calculated the timing of ancient athletic games. In effect, this was the world's first analog computer, built at a time when, according to conventional timelines, gear-driven machinery of this complexity did not exist. The precision is astonishing. Some gears contain more than 200 teeth, each crafted with a degree of uniformity requiring tools and techniques far beyond what is typically attributed to Hellenistic artisans. The mechanism uses epicyclic gearing, a sophisticated arrangement not seen again until the 14th century. Its builders understood astronomical cycles so thoroughly that the device could account for the elliptical orbit of the moon using a variable speed gear, a feat that modern researchers only confirmed through X-ray imaging in the 21st century. This raises enormous questions. How did such a device appear seemingly out of nowhere, with no prior prototypes or developmental lineage? No other artifacts anywhere in the Mediterranean exhibit similar mechanical sophistication. If the Antikythera mechanism was part of a larger technological tradition, where are its siblings? Did they perish in fires, decay in shipwrecks, or vanish due to the fragility of bronze precision instruments? Some scholars attribute the invention to the followers of Hipparchus or Archimedes, suggesting the mechanism was an isolated peak of brilliance. Others argue that it represents the surviving fragment of a larger, now lost scientific tradition, one that blended mathematics, astronomy, and mechanical engineering at a level centuries ahead of its time. A more radical hypothesis proposes that we have underestimated the true technological capabilities of Hellenistic Greece. What is undeniable is that the Antikythera mechanism does not fit the accepted narrative of linear technological development, which forces us to ask, if one ancient device functioned as a mechanical computer, what other sophisticated machines might have disappeared before history had the chance to record them? 9. Peru's polygonal megalithic walls, stonework beyond known engineering. High in the Andes, in and around the ancient cities of Cusco and Sacsayhuaman, stand some of the most perplexing stone structures on Earth. These walls, composed of massive and irregularly shaped blocks, are fitted together with such incredible precision that not even a razor blade can slide between the seams. Some stones weigh 20 to 120 tons, yet they interlock in complex, multi-angled geometries. 12, 20, even 30 sides, forming a kind of three-dimensional puzzle that appears engineered rather than merely assembled. The craftsmanship defies conventional explanations. Unlike the rectangular blocks found in Greek or Egyptian masonry, the Andean stones were not standardized. Each piece was carved uniquely, with bulges, indentations, and angles that match its neighbors, like a custom-cut key fitting a lock. The contours of the stones wrap around each other in a way that suggests intimate knowledge of load distribution and seismic resistance. Indeed, these walls have survived countless earthquakes that devastated later colonial buildings, a testament to their engineering brilliance. What makes these structures particularly baffling is the absence of iron tools among the pre-Inca cultures traditionally credited with constructing them. The stones, often andesite or diorite, are among the hardest rocks to shape, requiring technologies capable of sustained, precise abrasion or impact. Yet no chisels, cutting devices, or workshop remnants have been identified that match the quality of the work. Additionally, the surfaces of many blocks show signs of smoothing and polishing that imply careful finishing techniques. Even more mysterious is the method of moving the stones. Some quarries lie miles away, separated from the construction sites by steep valleys and rugged mountain terrain. Traditional explanations propose ropes, ramps, and sheer manpower, but such methods struggle to account for the placement of multi-ton stones with millimeter-level accuracy. Scholars debate whether the walls were built by the Inca themselves or by an earlier, more technologically adept culture whose knowledge the Inca inherited. Oral traditions among Andean peoples often speak of earlier giants, stone-softening plants, or builders who could command the stones to move, legends dismissed as myth, but perhaps echoing memories of lost techniques. Some researchers argue that relentless trial-and-error craftsmanship over generations could produce such results. Others suggest that the stoneworkers possessed unknown methods of softening or manipulating stone surfaces. More speculative theories point to forgotten engineering systems or advanced knowledge that has vanished without written records. Regardless of origin, these walls stand as a monumental contradiction to the established timeline. And they lead to a challenging question. If ancient Andean builders mastered stoneworking techniques we still cannot replicate easily today, what level of technological understanding have we overlooked in the archaeological record? 10. The Iron Pillar of Delhi, metallurgy that should not exist. In the heart of Delhi, within the Qutb complex, stands a metal monument that has baffled metallurgists for decades. Rising over 23 feet and weighing more than 6 tons, the Iron Pillar of Delhi is one of the world's most enduring relics of ancient metallurgy. Its inscriptions attribute it to the reign of the Gupta Empire around the 4th to 5th century CE. That alone would be extraordinary, but the true mystery is not its age. It is the fact that this massive iron pillar has remained almost entirely rust-free for more than 1,600 years. The composition of the pillar is unlike most ancient ironwork. Instead of being made from highly refined steel, it was forged from wrought iron containing unusually high levels of phosphorus and minimal sulfur and manganese. This specific chemical mix, combined with the pillar's forging technique, created a protective surface layer known as misawite, a thin, stable film of iron hydrogen phosphate that resists corrosion. The layer forms naturally, but only under very precise conditions of composition, temperature, and atmospheric exposure. What makes the pillar truly anomalous is the consistent quality of its construction. Metallurgical analysis indicates that the iron was forged in multiple stages, with each segment expertly welded together using techniques remarkably advanced for the era. Producing large, pure iron blooms without carbon contamination would require controlled furnaces and sophisticated smelting practices. Yet no surviving records or parallels in ancient Indian metallurgy show that such methods were widespread. The pillar appears as an isolated engineering peak, emerging suddenly without clear precedents or successors. This raises significant questions. If Gupta-era blacksmiths possessed the ability to produce corrosion-resistant iron on a monumental scale, why did the technique vanish? Why do later Indian ironworks, some only centuries old, rust rapidly while the pillar stands untouched by time? And if the knowledge was known to a select guild, why did it not spread across the subcontinent? Some scholars argue that the pillar is simply the product of an exceptionally pure ore source and careful craftsmanship. Others propose that it originates from a lost tradition of high-temperature iron forging that declined after political and cultural shifts. More speculative theories suggest that the pillar embodies remnants of an earlier technological inheritance, a metallurgical practice preserved for a moment before disappearing completely. But even the most conservative explanations admit that the iron pillar's resistance to corrosion is not fully understood, a rare statement in scientific literature. Which leaves us with a final question. If ancient metallurgists could create iron that defies time itself, what other forgotten technologies might lie hidden behind the veil of history? Across continents and eras, from submerged shipwrecks to windswept plateaus, the 10 discoveries in this documentary present a pattern too persistent to ignore. Each artifact, whether a precision-drilled bracelet, a rust-proof iron monolith, or a mechanical computer centuries ahead of its time violates the neat, linear narrative of human development. Taken individually, they are anomalies. Taken together, they form a constellation of contradictions that suggests our historical timeline is not simply incomplete, but fundamentally uneven. One theme emerges. Knowledge does not always move forward in a straight line. It can leap, collapse, vanish, and reappear in unexpected places. The sophistication encoded in these artifacts hints at periods of innovation far earlier than our textbooks allow. Moments when small groups, isolated cultures, or forgotten civilizations mastered techniques that later disappeared from the world. The reasons may be simple: natural disasters, political upheaval, loss of written records, or the fragility of technology itself. Or they may be far more complex, tied to migrations, cross-cultural exchanges, or entire traditions swallowed by time. What these discoveries ultimately reveal is not certainty, but possibility. They remind us that humanity's past is larger, deeper, and more intricate than the narrow windows through which we view it. And they invite the same question that opened this journey. If these artifacts are real, and they are, what part of our story is still missing? Perhaps somewhere beneath centuries of sediment, sealed in a cave, buried under a collapsed temple, or resting on the floor of an undiscovered shipwreck, lies the next anomaly. The next clue capable of reshaping everything we think we know. Until that moment arrives, the question remains open, and the timeline of human history waits silently for its next fracture. If you found value in this exploration, consider joining the conversation, sharing your own insights, and following the channel as we continue uncovering what history tried to forget.